What lie do people need to stop believing? The whole belief of small animals like reptiles, fish, and rodents have no intelligence and function on instincts alone. This belief is very harmful in the pet trade due to misinformation, including the idea that they don't benefit from any enrichment, stimuli, and do best in a tiny empty box given the bare minimum or borderline neglectful care. These animals are far smarter than people realize. They can recognize faces, can be trained, capable of problem solving, and so much more. On a related note, the idea that if it's not a cat or dog, it can't be an interactive pet, meaning you can't do anything with them, they aren't capable of interacting with you in a real way. My dad gave me this opinion once, when I mentioned that I'd like to maybe get a pet snake someday. He said something along the lines of, "But it can't do anything with you." I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something like that. Exotic pets can interact with you, and you can have fun with them. You may not be able to take your guinea pig or budgie out for a walk, but you can still play with them, build play structures for them, and you'll get to enjoy watching them play with something you made for them. If your pet does well with handling, you can have them sit in your lap, on your shoulder while you're on your computer or just lounging on the couch. Let your lizard walk around the house for a while, under your supervision. There's all kinds of different ways to interact with exotic pets. Just because they're not a typical cat or dog doesn't mean you can't have fun with them. As someone who works in a pet store, usually I have customers that do their best and listen. But the worst are fish. Still educate people almost every day that no, goldfish can't go in a bowl. Bettas shouldn't go in a bowl. No fish can be in a bowl. A fish needs more than water. You do no more than put some water in the tank, throw them in, the fish will die. No, you can't shove 10 fish in a 10-gallon tank. No, you can't put koi in a tank at all. Yes, turtles need 75 or more gallon tanks. There's no such thing as a mini turtle. And for S sake, stop putting your poor hamsters in those terrible plastic cages. Oh, but Belle, why? They're so cute with their fun shapes and tubes and colors. Well, that's exactly why. They're always too small. They're easy to escape from. The tubes can be a hazard to larger hamsters, and they don't provide enough nesting, tunneling areas. I don't care how much your kid likes the rocket ship or fire truck. Just grab a used 20 grams. Trust me, people throw them out all the time. To add on to this, my turtle loves convict cichlids. I'm not sure if he thinks they're other turtles or what, but he does everything to them that he used to with my other turtle before we unfortunately lost him. This is all while the fish just sits there, knowing he's clearly not a threat. Animals are weird, but there's a lot more going on than people like to admit. This is also a bit of an issue because it forces me to keep a convict with my peacocks and haps, but it usually isn't too bad. I was lucky enough to have my 2 pet rats live for 3 years. They were both very smart and were capable of completing tasks and definitely showed affection. I also taught them to come to me when I would click, and they were potty trained. Not sure what animal would function on instinct. Reptiles are the only things that I've heard function much on instinct, but I wouldn't think that they are incapable of intelligence or affection of some sort. I've owned mice, and they are so active. They come up for treats. If you do it at a certain time every night, they learn and will wait. They climb, they dig, and yes, they destroy. But they absolutely need way more than pet stores advertise. I had mine in a 860 SKU in cage, and sometimes it still didn't feel like enough with the way they hopped around. They also express their excitement by popcorning and generally being super sweet, especially with the way they act to each other females. I'm with you on most of this, but some snakes, like ball pythons, don't gain much from being handled except for being more comfortable with being handled, a fake. There's not really an emotional component to it for them. Most animals are quite intelligent, as they've had basically just as much time as we have to adapt to their environment. I think the problem is that people have a very human-centric view of what intelligence is, so since other animals don't have language or tools as complex as ours, they're obviously not as intelligent. I had a guinea pig that came to me when I called him, loved cuddles, licked, kissed your face, and put his head up when he wanted chin tickles. So much more intelligent than most people give them credit for. It hurts when I see piggies outdoors in small cages. They love to watch and interact with you. Mine also squeaked, ran to the end of the cage whenever giving them treats. We had to hold it whilst they munched veg or they'd drop it and not care, haha. I'd argue that almost all animals inherently act on instinct. Who really knows if a lizard being trained truly wants to train or is just doing it because they know they will be rewarded? That is, just doing it to survive? Even with us humans, it's tricky, because do we really want the things we want, or is it just a lie we tell ourselves to make our lives fulfilling? That everyone gets a happy ending. I work in the death industry, specifically removal. I promise, when your time is up, no matter who you were in life, your corpse is no different than anyone else. You'll probably most likely die unceremoniously in the middle of the night in bed, or while doing a mundane task. Just pray you aren't alone, or it could be days until you're found. My dad is a great example of that. He lived right, took care of everyone, even when he had no obligation. He never knew a stranger, and made everyone in the room share a smile. He served 30+ years in the military, retired, then got a bread route. Kept working till his body couldn't anymore at 62. I took care of him the last 10 years. Most people in my family didn't even spare a second thought, let alone a few moments to come say hi. My dad wasn't the kind of person who went on and on about religion, but the way he lived his life showed that he put Jesus first and inspired me to do the same. He passed away in December last year, having not have moved in 6 months. All he wanted was to see his children. They were his whole life. From an outside perspective, he lived his whole life for others, and almost noon did so for him. Seeing it from the other side, as a mom, and knowing all he gave up, every hard choice he made but hid from me so I would have no guilt, inspires me. However, I don't know that I have it in me to be just as selfless as he was. I used to believe that. I loved someone more than anything in the world, and they broke my heart. It would be extremely hard to love someone again, and even if I manage that, it will never be as strong or as pure as that. The relationship lasted almost 4 years, and it's almost been 5 years since we stopped talking. The love never went away, but my heart did get colder. I feel things less than I used to. I even dated someone for a year. I tried to play the part. I tried to force myself to love them, but when I found out they cheated, I just went, oh, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, and didn't even feel sad. Just relief I wouldn't have to force myself to play the part. I saw my ex with a girl at my birthday thing a few months ago. Our birthdays are in the same month. I went on a day one of my friends from far away said they could go, and it happened to be his birthday. I saw him there with his current girlfriend. I was pretty messed up for a few weeks. I finally broke down crying a few days later because my family kept asking what was up with me. I told them to drop it, tried to hold a brave face, but they could see right through me. Saying it out loud just broke a dam through my emotions. It's been almost 5 years, and just the sight can make me break down crying and leave me messed up for weeks. I often see this a lot. Feel like the original sentiment has been misinterpreted and regurgitated like Chinese whispers at this point. There's no exact number because it's incredibly difficult, almost impossible to differentiate between conscious and unconscious brain activity, or more specifically, processes. But the numbers stated and estimated are generally 5-10. This isn't the same as you only use 10% of your brain, but we are only consciously aware of 10% of our brain. In a literal and factual sense, yes, we use all of it, most of the time. Consciousness is kind of like a sandbox. We exist in a state inside something else that we don't have any access to. For example, we don't have any access mentally to our immune system, liver, kidneys, body temperature, etc., and then only have limited access to things like breathing and blinking, where we can control it. However, 99% of the time is ran on automation, which again we don't have any control or choice over. Our brains are much more busier keeping us alive and functioning than who tweeted what. But seeing is the world we see, the way we interpret reality, the way we rationalize and justify things is all dealt with by the conscious mind, which indeed is just a small part of the brain's daily 24/7 schedule. Yes, we only use 10% of our brains. The other 90% is used unconsciously to keep us alive and functioning, and making unconscious decisions to make up 100% usage activity. That was pretty high on my list too, along with a host of other fallacious experimental results and specious urban legends. A glass of wine a day is good for heart health. That experiment has been repeated many times and has never resulted in the same conclusion as the first experiment. So the first was obviously falsified. That carrots are extremely good for acute eyesight. Beta-carotene is a component of good eyesight, but it's not as important as people think. That idea came from rumors circulated by the British government during because they didn't want Germans to catch on that they had invented radar to see bombers from much further away, so they said their pilots all ate lots of carrots, that we only use 10% of our brains. The experiment concluded that we use all of our brains, but that we only use an average of 10% at a time. That the double-slit experiment somehow supports the law of attraction by concluding that consciousness collapses probability waves in physical actualities. The experiment concludes nothing of the kind, and says nothing about consciousness at all. It concludes that measurement, as in interaction with other probability waves, may collapse the wave front. People ran away with the idea that a human observer has to do the measuring, which is completely out of left field. Literally everything people think they know about Tesla, it's all false. He wasn't a physics genius. He had very poor maths. He didn't have a grand battle with Edison. The actual battle was between Edison and Westinghouse, and Tesla was a mere pawn in that competition. He didn't discover free energy and wasn't Ed for trying to promote it. His idea of free energy was to pump electricity into the earth and somehow extract it somewhere else on the earth. That does not work unless you are extremely close to the energy source, and you're still going to suffer enormous energy loss in the process. That we have some constitutional right to travel without a driver's license. I used to believe this one myself because someone did a very tricky job of digging up old court cases where the judges and lawyers seem to support this notion. But when you look up each of the actual cases, you'll find that the judge ruled against the people trying to travel without a license, and that states have the right to access a reasonable fee for licensing. All the comments about how we should have that right were footnotes or comments about the cases and were not part of the legally binding rulings in those cases. I doubt most people even use that. Source: numerous co-workers born and raised in the USA who supposedly have HS diplomas who can't comprehend simple written instructions, can't perform simple addition, can't accurately count a stack of parts, can't reliably verify measurements with a tape measure, yet seem to think they're smarter than everyone else and like to prove it by showing off how informed they are, which, 9 times out of 10, means they're regurgitating whatever propaganda Fox News pundits tell them. Can't reliably verify measurements with a tape measure, yet seem to think they're smarter than everyone else and like to prove it by showing off how informed they are, which, 9 times out of 10, means they're regurgitating whatever propaganda Fox News pundits tell them. Tell me about it. Going through my second teenage acne phase in my 50 seconds on top of my rosacea. I'm not a dermatologist, but here are some cleanser tips that come from dealing with my own acne plus my teenage daughter. I think most folks just go for a spot treatment cream, but paired with an acne cleanser makes a difference. Wash your face twice a day and don't scrub, wash gently. Rosacea: see a dermatologist and they will prescribe a medicine, usually Metrogel, but you can cleanse with a sulfur soap. It's very gentle but smells awful. It made a big difference with mine even after I stopped using the prescription meds. It's cheap too. I get a 3-pack of big bars from Amazon for about $7. For those with non-cystic acne on your back, try a benzoyl peroxide 10% cleanser. This did wonders for my daughter's bacne. If you have non-cystic on your face, try a salicylic acid 2% cleanser. There are tons of brands available, so it doesn't need to be expensive. This helps with my facial acne for sure. If you have cystic acne, see a dermatologist, usually needs prescription meds to handle. My ex used to have horrible cystic on his back and needed some heavy-duty meds to clear it up. I don't know that anything OTC can help. Maybe someone else has a tip. Obviously, everyone is different. Your experience may not be the same as mine. Guys, for everyone in this comment section, if you're not the kind of person who has already tried everything, get a loofah. Not a plastic one, a good sponge one, a good one. Switch to a decent body wash. I use Dr. Teal's. It works for me. Use that thing every shower, every day. Then on top of that, wash your sheets twice a week. Yeah, I said it. Try this for a month. If you see no improvement, see a dermatologist because you likely have other issues. Definitely change body washes until you find one that works. This isn't a cure, it's preventative. You have to shower daily, preferably before bed. Also find out if you're a cotton or polyester person. Buy 3 shirts of each and give each a turn and see if it makes a difference. Also, clearly this is meant as general advice, not for those who need treatments. Like I said, it's for people who haven't already tried everything. I took a stick to pick up a baby crow and put him up on a smaller tree. There was a whole flock of crows going crazy. They all show off their babies to the clan, I guess. Once they saw me lift the baby up with a stick, they all got quiet. I got like a thank you caw from the crow. I went inside and didn't think much of it. After that, I stopped getting dive bombed during nesting season for a few years. About a week after it happened, the young one had picked up the flying thing and landed on the ledge to greet me until the parents came and took new friend away. Still to this day, the crows in the area never dive bomb or on me. We rescued a baby like this. The tree that the nest was in was right in front of and touching our balcony. The nest was in a crook and the baby had fallen to the front yard below. We scooped it up and put it in a box for a few hours because we believed that myth. I was sure he was done for. I did some Googling and saw that it's a myth, so I thought, why not, we can try. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad had been hanging around calling out for him, so we put him back and waited. The parents were so happy, we secured the nest so it sat at a better angle so he couldn't fall out again. That little bird thrived and grew till he was able to fly. Would you believe he didn't fly away for about a week once he got his proper wings? He hung around. It was like he was saying thank you or something. So cute. Best to literally just leave nature as is and let it do its thing. We are a part of the ecosystem, not above it. Seeing a baby bird on the ground and choosing to put it back may seem like the moral choice, but there's so many consequences that your moral actions could unfold for said bird, or their connective web. You could pass on viruses to the bird and its family. A predator may not eat that day, making itself and own young go hungry. You could screw up the natural path it was meant to take on its own innate and ruin its chances of survival. You could make the mama bird discard all her chicks if your chemical scent got on that bird and the mama could smell it. The mama may choose not to return to her nest, leaving all the chicks to starve. A potential mating may be missed because of your presence. A potential invasion by another pathogenic bird may not take place, leaving her own chicks to have no home. You may damage their nest with your fondling, or a young child may see you and attempt to climb up to mess with the nest afterwards. Life is so complex for what is around us, and we really need to see ourselves as one part within our whole ecosystem, the most damaging part at that, and stop trying to play God, messing with every single thing we can in the name of moral good. My 2 pence from a marine biologist. A couple years ago, I was trimming some small trees on my property, and one of the branches I trimmed fell in a direction I did not expect, and it pulled a nest out of an adjacent tree, along with 3 little chicks. It was a softer landing than you might expect, but it ripped the nest apart. Luckily, I had an extra nest lying around that I had found in the yard and stuck in the garage because it was kind of cool. We gathered up the little chicks into a shoebox, set them aside, and I used a ladder to put the new nest up in the same spot the old one was located, and weaved some fresh green new growth around it to attach it firmly to the branches. We put the chicks back in the nest and stayed away. The mama bird came back later that day and acted as normal. I kept an eye on them from a distance over the next couple weeks, and they all grew up fine and eventually left the nest. That melms are a good source of income, that they're a hobby, and that having a job is basically slavery. The work can't be left at work if it's with you 24/7, no sick days, no tow, no benefits of any kind. But hey, you go make that quick cash by scheming ways to get people that trust you and would support you prior to this no matter what, get them to join and burn those bridges for a hobby. It didn't happen to me, but I've known people who suddenly become buddy-buddy just to try to trap others into meetings, recruitment things. Even had a friend's upline person call me and try to guilt-trip me for not helping them out, told them flat out that I'd do anything to help them out, but this wasn't it. Getting a raise that puts you into the next tax bracket does not mean all your income is taxed at the higher rate, only the small piece over the threshold. So many people just don't get even the simple part of how taxes work. Was arguing this with a guy at work who was going to refuse a promotion because he thought it'd earn him less. Each level of income gets taxed at its relevant bracket, not the highest one, if you earn $25,000 a year, and bracket B starts at $23,000 a year. Then everything $22,999 and below will be taxed at bracket A or below. I had to physically show him the government site stating such to get him to believe me, and even then he was skeptical. Always check fuel prices online. Westhouse has a website that updates tomorrow's prices to 3:00 p.m. the day before. I've seen people queue for ages on Cheap Tuesday Arvo, when I know that exact same servo will be cheaper tomorrow and no queue in the morning. Use a fuel tracking website and get somewhere on the way. And remember, those for See a Leader shop loyalty discounts are not something to go out of your way for. Most I've ever saved with that is like 1 point to dollar. I drive for work. I fuel up daily. Over here, at least they are required to report tomorrow prices by 2:30 p.m., and tracking prices is a government thing to raise confidence in the public. Your country may vary though. I'm fine with the last 2 points, but the first one is something I particularly struggle with. It's not even about pleasing people. I'm genuinely terrified of saying the wrong joke at the wrong time due to me misreading the situation. I'm very, very socially dumb and really hurting or offending someone who didn't deserve it. I had that happen to me several times and it's horrible, so I don't wish it upon anyone. I've done this for so long it has become a habit, and people essentially confirming my behavior as good just reinforces it. Maybe I might be just a little too sensitive. As a dispatcher, I'm never really upset by the people who call within minutes of not finding their demented grandmother or such and who find them within minutes of being on the phone. You didn't waste my time. You had an emergency, and the emergency was resolved before we got off the phone. Nah, wasting dispatch's time and resources is having an Apple product that gives an automatic crash notification. False alarms are close to a 100-to-1 ratio for me. And that one has 1 million people calling 911 themselves, making the notification redundant. Call 911 if your loved one goes missing. If you knowingly keep automatic crash detection on your iPhone, I hope you step on a Lego, because you could easily be getting someone Ed because we sent the closest ambulance to Fake Bull just before the CPR call came out. Actually, this one is true in some areas, or at least the local police believe it to be despite what's on the books. Even after years of hearing you can report any time and threads like this, there have been countless cases where people call up and are told they need to wait. Every time this comes up, I'm reminded of trying to report my missing cousin back in '09, and his family were flatly told they had to wait. He was 6 years old, by the way. He was never found, and it infuriates us that this ridiculous policy is in place or at least being followed incorrectly. Since then, I've paid close attention on reality shows, true crime recaps, and other such things, and sure enough, I've heard many parrot this same wait 24 hours nonsense. So as much as I'd love to agree it's a lie, reality has shown otherwise. It really makes you wonder how deep this bad policy goes. When it comes to a child, it need to be right away. Even if they may not actually do anything for 24 hours does not mean you should not report it, and see if you can start getting the ball rolling if the police are not going to get started. Do this by reaching out to press and community. If the police do not want you to wreck out to the public, then tell them you will not sit there and they either start helping or you will do your own thing for 24 hours. But you do not need to the police to get the word and flyers out, and I think the police are a little more serious when someone goes missing and something is just not right. The rumor come from the fact that adults are considered free to go, and they might not investigate if it is in the first 24 days because of that. Past that, they consider it abnormal and now they will investigate. However, any abnormal disappearances will be investigated right away. The keyword here is abnormal. He sometime go see a friend without telling anybody. But right now I can't find him. That is not immediately abnormal. He is known to disappear without any traces. That may get the 24 hours. But the grandpa that only goes out for the bank, grocery, and gas, and never for more than 2 hours. If the 2 hours has been elapsed, they will. If not, they may wait. After all, he might be on his way back still. It get more complex when there is some mental condition involved, like Alzheimer.